If you have resources to share, feel free to put them in the chat room, pardon me, in the chat box. And that way we'll have a record of all of anything that you think is really important. You could also, I suppose, just verbally give them and people can catch up with that. But if you want to, you can put a link or even just the title of things in the chat box. We're going to do things a little differently today. We are going to let you control your microphones and your cameras. If you have some things to add, and we'll be just kind of asking some very generic questions as we move through today's program. If you have some things to add, we just invite you to jump in and share. You'll have to kind of listen and make sure you're not stepping on someone else's comments, but I think we'll be able to handle it pretty well. So feel free to share your screen if you care to, and or your camera, and also unmute yourself when you have something that you want to say. Again, you can always put things in the chat box. We've got staff monitoring that. So first, I'd like to invite the Wisconsin literacy staff to introduce themselves. Anna, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, I'm Anna Buehrer. I am the Regional Literacy Consultant for the Northeast region.
Okay, Beth?
And I'm Beth Gaitan, the Regional Literacy Consultant for the Southwest South Central. And as Marcia said, I'll be sending out the post-training survey. So please do respond. It's very, very short. And I'm really glad to see everybody on today.
Great. Cassie, how about you?
Hello, I'm Cassie McLean. I'm the Regional Community Coordinator for the North Central region.
Okay, and last but not least, Shannon.
Hi, I'm Shannon Mason-Young. I am the Northwest Regional Community Coordinator, and I am looking forward to our conversation today. Yeah.
Great. Okay, I think we can probably get started. I'm going to disappear from the screen and let our PowerPoint take over. Maybe, yes, I am. Anna, if you want to go ahead and get started. The first question we're asking is, for those of you who attended, what new resource did you discover during the COABE conference? And again, I invite you to show your screen and just unmute yourself. And I see a face there. Tell us, what new resource did you discover? Let's have one of the RLCs jump in, or the RCCs. What was your favorite new resource? Anna, can you share what you thought was really good?
Hi, yes, I'm getting to it here. So I'm looking through my notes because I'm running the PowerPoint. I had to print them off. So I'm gonna say one, I'm not sure we would call this necessarily a resource, but one of the things I learned is that Tyson Foods has something called the Upward Academy that they offer for their employees. And they often do this in partnership with their local literacy provider. And they currently have them in about 60 of their 130 sites across the nation, and they want to have them in all of them. And so I believe we have some Tyson Foods in Wisconsin, and I don't know whether or not we have programs that that are partnering with their Tyson Foods, or if this would be of interest to any of the members here in the state.
That is cool. I see Beth put something in the chat box. It's a link. Beth, do you want to talk about what you included?
Yeah, so I was just going to put a couple links in of things that I learned about. So one is NOAA Text. I don't know if anybody else was on that resource for dyslexia or learners with dyslexia. I thought that was just, it looked really, really interesting. And I'm looking at, I'd like to include that in some of the things that I do this fiscal year for members in the Southwest South Central. And then I'm trying to copy and paste another one. There's a financial literacy resource. I'm sorry, I sent it 3 times.
It's okay.
A financial literacy curriculum. And then another open education resource. I just put 3 links in of kind of materials and curricula that I learned about that I thought looked really, really interesting. I don't know if anybody else was on any of had seen any of those resources, but I thought they looked really, really like worth looking into to use. And I see, so I'm also going to be monitoring the chat. And I see that a couple people, Stacy, said just like a lot of, like learning some new curriculum, some materials. And then we have a hand raised too. Who is that?
Okay.
Oh, and then Anna said claimyourfuture.com is also another financial literacy. Deb Helquist, do you want to unmute yourself?
I think I did.
You did.
You did. I can hear you.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes me a while because I'm not real familiar with GoToMeeting. Are you talking about the gal who was from, oh golly, the financial literacy was on that last Wednesday? Oh, it was called, is that the one?
Reed Center? Yeah, from
Yes.
Reed Center. Mm-hmm.
That was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That was a new resource I was going to mention too.
And
Yeah,
tell
it
us
was
that one again.
It was the last chat I put in. So readcenter.org/tutor resources. And it's just really, it's a really fantastic free financial literacy curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have the booklets and they have the teacher's manuals, the student booklets you can print, and some, maybe some worksheets or something. But you can choose whichever unit you want, and it's totally free, totally accessible to us. And this is something I've been looking for.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you were on that, Deb. Yeah, I thought it was a really, really good session. And I see Trish has her hand up. So Trish, you can, if you haven't already, you can unmute yourself.
We can't hear you yet. Can't hear you, Tricia. Trish, it says you're unmuted, but we can't hear you if you're talking. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Oh, before we move on any further, I know there are people out in the audience who are saying, yes, I see those resources in the chat box. How do I access them once this program is over? Can Beth or Anna answer that?
I don't see this chat that you're talking about. I see the word chat and I see people's names, but I don't see any chat.
Can you click the plus button? Do you see, if you see the chat and on the left-hand side, there's a little plus button?
Right.
If you click that, your chat should come down. You should be able to open it up and see.
Is the chat, all I see are the people's names, chat button. I'm sorry to bother you with this, but it's
no. Okay. Here, let me share my.
Oh, I see.
Oh, perfect.
It's actually different on my iPad. I have to
yeah.
click everyone. I have to click everyone. And okay,
perfect.
now I see it. Thank you, Marcia.
Excellent.
Thank you, Beth.
Oh, good.
Um,
Good.
yeah, that's a good question. I don't think that the chat will be available once we turn off the webinar. We are recording the webinar, and so you can go back. Otherwise, you could just copy and paste into, into a Word document or something, or just write down some of the resources that you see in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you didn't know something, or that you knew something I didn't. Yeah, I would just copy and paste or just make little notes. But does the chat show up in the recording when people go in to look at it? Is the chat there?
It does not.
Okay.
However, I do have access to it, and so I can go through and copy the resources that we have in there. So we can make that available. We can put it with
That would be super.
recording.
That would be
So when
great.
we publish the recording, we can publish the list of resources as well.
Oh,
Super.
thank you, Anna.
That would be gigantic. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anybody else want to weigh in on a new resource that they discovered? Otherwise, we'll move on to our next question.
Well, I don't know if this is a resource, but I know we're going to touch on communities that are doing fantastic things, but this, I'm going to call it a resource because it really grabbed my heart. It was from the Montgomery County Literacy Council in Maryland, and this young lady, the first one that I looked at was, her name was Alexandra, and their whole philosophy, and this was before COVID and of course after COVID, was to go out to the people. And I was just so grabbed by this, because I guess I'm in the position that Sawyer County Literacy might be homeless, might not have a place to call their center. It's still up in the air. And so it's like, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm going out to them.
Right.
So I started, and I'm just going to be able to do it one by one. And but I got some little prepackaged snacks and my water bottles, and making contacts one by one. I haven't gotten a lot of responses, but that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, that's all right. You're doing the
So
right
that's
thing.
my resource.
That's wonderful. Well, and that's a perfect segue into our next comment.
Marcia, if I may, I want to add to, I believe that was Deb that was speaking, that I also attended a session with the Literacy Council at Montgomery County, and part of the outreach that they do is they have a walk-in conversation classes at their TANF offices. And I thought that was a really a great idea.
At their which office, Anna?
At their TANF offices.
Yes.
And so, and that's a walk-in, like a drop-in tutoring program. I don't think it's operational right now, but something to consider, programs could consider when they're able to do that kind of community outreach.
Absolutely.
Well, if I could add to that, the gal that I had listened to attended her session, she invited anyone who has an English language learner to join their chat, and it's online, of course, it's virtual, and it was very, very open and welcoming. And yeah, I thought of a couple of people who work at the Chinese restaurant, that I've been trying to figure out how to reach. So I got the impression, at least this Alexandra from that agency, it wasn't just for TANF parents, but it was for anyone who wanted to practice their conversation, and it was really conversation, not just being taught. So anyway, it's very, very good. And yeah.
Good. Well, and I think that's a perfect segue to this next question. What common theme or sentiment did you hear throughout the conference? I mean, certainly COVID, I'm sure, was a big part of it. How do we deal with it? But I really liked what you were just saying about being inclusive and reaching out and all of that. So what common themes or sentiments did you come away with from the sessions that you attended? If you want to raise your hand, if you want to just jump in, show your camera.
Marcia, this is Cassie.
Okay.
I just wanted to say one of the things that really stood out for me, and I think it stood out because of the time we're in with dealing with COVID, was the importance of really knowing who your audience is, who your market is. What do you know about them? And, everything, from recruiting your students. Who are your students? Who are you trying to reach? Who are your tutors? What do you know about them? Just the importance of really understanding in this day and age who they are, so that you can change your approach to reach them. From understanding that, young people today spend a lot more time on their phone than they do watching television. And, those types of things. And I kept hearing that in so many of the sessions that I participated in.
Good. That's a great one. That's a great one. What else? What other common themes or sentiments did you hear as you were participating? Shannon, we haven't heard from you. Was there something that you thought came up that was important?
Yes. So one of the sessions that I thought was really good was actually the last session. Was actually the last session of the day. And I'm trying to pull up my notes. It was on work skills, and it talked about soft skills and hard skills, and just the importance. I thought was sorry, I'm trying to pull up my note here. I just toggled into a wrong document. But what I thought was so important that he talked about was when we're doing, when we're working with our learners, to keep peeling back and getting into more information. And he used an example of vocabulary on vegetables and fruit, identifying vocabulary words when you shop, and then not only going that, but asking, is it a vegetable? Is it a fruit? Is it a vegetable? Is it a fruit? Where would you find these things? Where are they grown? And he was just really talking about making sure that we're developing those critical thinking skills when we're working with our learners. And I just thought, I just really liked the way that it was helping your, sorry, I'm looking for my notes here, helping to, I just thought it was a really good presentation on really making sure that we're kind of delving deep into different topics and just continuing to use those resources wisely and to develop those workforce skills.
Oh, that absolutely makes all the sense in the world. It's all about, adult learning theory, that people learn best what is the most important to them. So I love that. Just don't ask them whether a tomato is a vegetable or fruit. Anna, I see you there. What were you going to add?
I was going to say that I attended several sessions about student leadership. And so ways to involve the learners in your community in program design and just having leadership roles. Literacy Kansas City. And I'm going to type this in the chat box because I loved their tagline too. It's changing lives beyond words. They led a session on discovering leadership within your learning community and had a great structure around different ways that learners can be involved in leadership roles. So they have an advisory committee, and the advisory committee takes nominations from every program. So they have like an adult basic education program, a GED program, and English language learning program. And so, all of the different programs within their organization, they would have a nominee to that committee. They also had a student needs committee, and they had like a process where if somebody had identified a need within their organization, they had a process that you could send an email into this committee that would then review and respond to that. They had student advocates. Their student advisory committee planned and cleaned up all their events. So all their recognition events were planned by the learners. And then the way that it was structured is they had a programs manager who led the advisory committee. But then the needs committee was led by a volunteer. So, and then that needs committee then also would meet quarterly just to go over the things that they maybe had been addressing in their through email. So I thought that was a really great process that they had of involving their learners in different ways.
Oh, I really, really like that. I know many agencies struggle with ways to encourage their learners to participate without having the learners feel overwhelmed. So that's good.
That's
Okay.
actually one of the comments that we have in the boxes. Yeah, somebody said that a theme that they noticed throughout the conference was learner-led, the learner-led approach. And then we have a couple more comments. Another strong theme was, I agree with this. This is one thing I got from it too, is be prepared, but be nimble and able to change.
And didn't we learn that this year? Yes.
Yes. Kelly put in a resource, mathwithmrward.club, and it's a website that contains an interactive student educational plan. And so they're going to look into the possibility of incorporating this online educational plan at Literacy in Green Bay. I'd love to hear more about that, Kelly. And then Robin just asked, I think you answered it, Anna, is which literacy organization was that again? And it was Literacy Kansas City. So Kelly, would you want to unmute yourself and talk a little bit about the online student educational plan?
Sure, this is Kelly. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So I haven't really had an opportunity to look at it in great detail, but I did attend that session, and it seems to be something that we might at least want to consider. So the Math with Mr. Ward is a website, and within that website is the interactive SEP. He has correlated it to CCR standards. And so what it does is it takes the score report that is generated by DRC when somebody takes a TABE test online, and it looks at those competencies that people are not proficient in, and then it will sync that or link that to certain curriculum so that the student can so the instructor can go in and assign assignments based on those competencies that the student needs to work on. It's really it really looks fantastic, actually, and he's got a whole bunch of different curriculum series that are I guess linked into this interactive SEP. It can track student progress. It can contain assignments based on the student's needs. There are resources within it for both the students and particular programs. It's really what I would suggest everybody do is just go to that website and find the interactive SEP and just kind of play around with it. It's got all kinds of drop-down menu where you can select whatever curriculum your program might be using if it's in there. And it's much more student focused so that the student can go in and track their progress and let the instructor know when assignments and competencies have been completed. So the whole idea being to take a lot of that workload off of the instructor and give it back to the student, which is another theme that we had talked about, is, you know, sort of making our learners or having our learners be more involved in that whole process. So we're going to look at possibly incorporating it with a CCR1 class that we are currently operating at Literacy Green Bay. So I would just invite everybody to go in and take a look at it. Being that distance learning is probably something that we're going to be continuing for not a short period of time to come.
Right, right.
Kelly, that's it. That is such a fantastic resource. I was just wondering, are you going to teach learners individually how to use it, or will you have like a learner orientation to introduce?
Yeah, that's a very good question. If we were meeting in person, you know, we would certainly probably do that as part of a class session. But right now, probably it would be a one-on-one type situation with the learner. And so, you know, I still have to go over it with the CCR1 instructor and see how she feels about it. But I was incredibly excited about it when I watched his presentation. He is a instructor at a technical college in Georgia, and basically has built this interactive SEP from the ground up, and has decided to share it, you know, nationwide with everybody as a free resource. So he's put an incredible amount of time and effort into building it. It is not available in Spanish currently, but he is working on putting resources on there that are in Spanish. So right now it's all English, but Spanish to come, he said.
Great. Oh, that sounds wonderful. Thank you.
You're
Let's
welcome.
move on to our next question. What state or community is doing great things? And you all have already mentioned several that are. What other states or communities or literacy programs did you hear that are really doing unique and wonderful things? Beth, did you want to jump in on this one? Were there some that stood out for you?
I would say really what's already been what we've already talked about. So let's see, I guess I'm not really, you know, Cassie had put in that FAME education, that's from the Financial Authority from Maine.
Right. Kansas City was one that was mentioned.
Yeah, I guess I'm not really, nothing aside from what we've talked about really stands out immediately in my mind.
Great. Well, that's fine.
Marcia,
Yeah.
and I think Anna maybe mentioned the Literacy Council of Montgomery County. I was just impressed with their program on reaching learning opportunities for non-traditional settings for serving the hardest to reach and teach. And I just thought they were doing some really amazing things. One of the things they said is first look at the facts. And one of the facts is the need is great and the resources are scarce. And number two, you work with what you have. And they talked about some of their programming going into a workplace, into a mobile home park, connecting with the school that the children would be going to work with the parents. So I just thought that was some pretty great things that they were doing.
Most definitely. Okay, let's move on to our next question. What ideas will you utilize first and foremost? Something you walked away and said, oh my gosh, I can't wait to start this. We've heard some pretty amazing things to this moment.
Marcia, that question and the question above it, what you want to learn more about, kind of to me go hand in hand.
Definitely.
Yeah. Does anybody know anything about, because I sent a message to this person, an exhibitor for CELL, C-E-L-L Ed, about their 1 million learners, and I did not hear back from her. And so I was wondering, does anybody know anything about this? It's supposed to be a mobile learning platform.
You know, I've heard it mentioned, but I really don't know anything about it either. Does anyone else? No, maybe not.
Yeah,
Well,
they had a sponsored break time, so I guess I'll need to go back and listen to that maybe, because I didn't get to the sponsored break
oh,
time.
okay, yeah. Yeah, that's the other nice thing. You'll be able to go back onto the COABE site and see and hear a lot of the things that we're talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move along. What do you want to learn more about now that you've heard of some of these unique things that are happening? And certainly we've touched on quite a few. Is there anything else that you want to learn more about that you may have heard? Anybody we haven't heard from yet? We'd love to hear some of the rest of you weigh in. I know a bunch of you were on the webinars or on the conference, if you will.
Marcia, this is Shannon. I think one of the things that I saw through that I would really like to learn more about is just kind of where we currently are in with the pandemic and COVID, and just all the different innovative ways that people are trying to blend their learning, learning, online communication. You know, how can we make those connections and help bridge that gap for those that don't have access to online learning? And so I think for me, that is what I want to learn more about in our communities, especially in our rural areas where that can be a challenge. So just trying to figure out, there were a lot of really good community connections being made that came up in several of the different sessions. And so I hope that can explore more of those options to make more connections in our communities to help reach more people.
Most definitely. And this is the perfect place for a commercial for and one of our upcoming webinars on now what's going to happen in fall. And that will be coming up. Oh gosh, I don't have the date in front of me. Anybody remember when that is?
August 13th.
Thank you. August 13th. And that's what we're going to explore, what people are getting ready for, what they're doing, how they're starting. Are they doing any in person? Are they going totally virtual? So by all means, you should have gotten the link to register for that, but that'll be out again, and you might want to consider being part of it, because this is where we will hopefully learn more about what folks are doing. Anybody else?
So Kelly added just a little bit more information about the interactive SEP in the comment, and just so you can type in the yellow boxes within the SEP, and when you select a textbook, the particular page numbers align with the competencies and they populate automatically. And when you choose a subject and a level in the SEP, the domains also populate automatically.
Oh,
So yeah, it really really looks like a fantastic resource.
Oh my gosh.
And then Robin mentioned CELL Ed is one of the apps that was involved in the Pro Literacies contest a few months ago, and they created an app for ELL and ABE learning. So to find out more about that on the Pro Literacy website, and let's see. Oh, and then Kelly did mention with the SEP that there's only one textbook per SEP. So if a student moves out of one book and into another, you do need to create another SEP for that textbook.
Oh, got it. Okay, good.
And Deb Helquist just said, yeah, thank you for the reminder about the upcoming webinar, Marcia. And I will echo that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yep, and we'll remind you all again via emails that, you know, what's coming up. So is there anything else that we didn't touch on from the conference? Something that maybe surprised you? Anything that maybe disappointed you? Anna, I see you're there.
Sure. So I have something, I'm going to try to share my screen here. I don't know if you guys, can you see the button at the bottom here?
Yep.
Can you see my screen and all the stuff I have in the bottom of my screen?
Yes. Yep.
So I was in a session about focusing, it was called Focusing on Language Instruction to Facilitate More Diverse and Equitable Results in the Mathematics Classroom. And one of the things they talked about was if you look at your computer, we have different terms that we call different icons. And so like one of them that I think is funny is the hamburger menu. And what the hamburger menu is like the 3 lines. I don't know if you can see it here. Sometimes it looks like just 3 dots in the upper corner. And when you click on that, you get another drop down. So that to me has always been a strange thing. Like, why would you call that a hamburger menu? So what they do is they have their learners come up with the terms themselves. So I want to ask you guys, you can throw your answer in the chat. This is how they did it in this session. What do you think the flower icon is? And the other one is do you know what the pizza icon might be?
Oh
So what
my.
the learners came up with these terms, flower and pizza.
Could the flower be the one where you look for the mechanics of of your computer? I always
Exactly.
thought it looked like a
So,
flower. That was a
so if
good
you
choice.
look, I don't know if you can see that I'm highlighting it right now, but the settings. So
Setting.
here, we often would call that a gear. So
Right.
with that approach, the learners name it. So then in that class, when they're doing when they're referring to, you know, go to your settings, they'll say, go to the flower instead
Yeah.
of say, go to the gear, because to the learners, they came up with that term of the flower. And so the terminology might be different in every class because this particular class or this group determined that that's a flower. Can anybody guess what the pizza is?
Can't imagine.
So Cassie guesses power on off button.
Good guess. It's not the one that this particular class came up with. Any other ideas?
Anybody else?
So what the pizza is it's your Wi-Fi signal.
Ah,
So here, you know, it's got the little lines on it. Or if you look in your, like on your cell phone at the very top, you've got the
sure.
little, that shape. And so then they'll talk about, you know, is your pizza shaded in? And so that's a way to determine whether or not somebody has actual access to, I'm trying to find the PowerPoint here, actual, if they're connected. So when you're trying to
Right.
determine if somebody's connected to the Wi-Fi, you can ask, hey, can you see the pizza? Is the pizza filled in? So the point is working with your learners to have them come up with the terminology. What does it look like to them? And then your communication goes, it's a little easier to explain things.
Sure. I love that. When we were teaching our children to play cards when they were really young, when it came to clubs, the kids always called clubs puppy feet, because it does look kind of like puppy feet. And to this day, they, as adults, they still call them puppy feet. So clearly that makes a difference to people in their learning. Anything else anybody cares to add?
Caitlin just says, thank you for sharing. She wasn't able to attend, but was really glad to hear the highlights from folks who were able to attend.
Great. Well,
just a quick question. Marcia, just one quick question is how long again can people go on and access the sessions if you're a registered participant?
Good question.
6 months.
6 months?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
Cool.
That's a value.
that should
Great.
give us a chance to raid everything that's on there. That's wonderful.
Yeah, fantastic.
Good. Well, thank you all for joining us today. This has been just fascinating. And as I said going in, I didn't get to attend, and I'm just excited to see what all is out there. Again, I want to remind you, you'll be receiving a survey from Beth, so watch for that. Take you just a minute to answer a few questions about today's webinar, help us make future webinars better and more engaging. So please share your information with us. Also remember, we have a number of upcoming webinars. We've got one on moving your fundraiser online. That's coming up this month. And then we've also got the plain language information out there. So by all means, check that out too. So again, anybody else have anything to add before we say goodbye? All right, then we will say goodbye. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.